For me personally, I'm allergic to drama. Like I hate drama, right? So, and there's no room for drama and emotion in business. It just isn't. It's going to make you a worse business person. So what I know to be true, in a high data environment, you have low drama. And in a low data environment, you have high drama, right? So now you're running your business on emotion. And that's a terrible way to run and lead a business. And to be truthful, nobody wants to work for a crazy person.
Welcome back to Chiropractic, where we talk business growth for chiropractors. I'm your host, Corey Hibben, and that was Dr. Stephen Franson, who is known in the chiropractic profession as the systems guy. Stephen has built 1,000 visit per week practice and now helps doctors worldwide to build a remarkable practice and ultimately building a remarkable life. In this episode, we dive deep into how to stop being the bottleneck of your business. If you feel like your team is busy, but you aren't seeing any progress, or you're carrying the entire business in your head, this conversation's for you. We're breaking down the specific metrics that your whole team needs to own to have a 7-figure mindset, and how to get your team to own their scorecard so that you can finally get back to doing things you love, like winter surfing in New Hampshire, which is exactly what Dr. Stephen does. Let's get into it. Welcome back to ChiroX, and today we are tackling the number one ceiling for hiring chiropractic owners, the bottleneck. Most of you listening to this are probably busy, but you are making progress to achieving these high-level goals, mostly because you're doing everything yourself. You're probably the engine, the battery, the exhaust, you're the entire car. And today I'm joined by the systems guy himself, Dr. Stephen Franson. He's built a very successful practice himself, and now he's helping doctors build a remarkable practice themselves by actually building a remarkable life. Stephen, welcome to the show, man.
Thanks, Corey. Great to be here, man. Always a pleasure and a privilege to talk to chiropractors. So I am all in, man. Let's get after it.
Yeah, last time we were face-to-face was in Colorado, surrounded by a whole bunch of chiropractors. And
Yeah, mile high, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Yes, yeah.
So Stephen, you are an avid winter surfer in New Hampshire, which I'm sure me, like everyone watching this or listening to this right now, had no idea that was even a thing. But most owners can't even imagine taking a long weekend, let alone chasing the waves all winter long. And so is the remarkable life something you earned after hitting 1,000 visits a week like you did with your previous practice? Or was this a system that was allowed you to grow into this happening in the first place? Which route was it?
Yeah, I know. I guess selfishly, I wanted to be able to have my cake and eat it too. So all the way through. Uh, I hate the expression, you can't have your cake and eat it too. That's immediately a limiting belief. So I think a better question is, how can I have my cake and eat it too? And that's always been my style. So from the very get-go, my wife, who's also a chiropractor, my partner in all things, Camilla and I decided, we saw too many of the people that we looked up to, the mentors, the big hitters, the super quote unquote successful people in chiropractic. And we just noticed that there was too much brokenness in our profession, broken marriages, broken bodies, broken spirits. They don't know their kids. They don't go on vacation, etc. And we just said that's too high of a price to pay. And we weren't going to do that. But at the same time, we're hardcore mission-driven chiropractors. And I'm an entrepreneur by nature. I'm literally, God made me like I'm 100% hardcore clinician, passionate, on purpose, vitalistic chiropractor, and 100% hardcore entrepreneur. So I love business. I love everything about business. And I know we're in the business of saving lives. So when business is good, everybody wins. And that's all I needed to know. So when I finally got into opening up our own practice, it was built for speed. You introduced me as the systems guy, and that comes from this, right? So, we built the original remarkable practice in Boston, almost 30 years ago now. And, I'll attribute whatever success we've been blessed with a couple of very clear things. We're always committed to telling the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth. We lead with chiropractic. We lead with the principle, right? It is our unique success proposition for humanity. And it's what's separates us in this crowded and confused marketplace. So we're very chiropractic forward in our patient education and teaching the principle and teaching the chiropractic wellness lifestyle, very much so. Number two, hardcore clinicians, just committed to driving better health experiences and better health outcomes for the families that we were trusted with. So serious clinicians. Number three, systematizing everything. So like you said, I'm the systems guy. So everything has to be systematized so we can scale it. So I'm known for creating practice and business systems that scale. And one of the most important parts of that is being able to be a team builder. So if I have a genius, I know how to build world-class teams of A players. And that has allowed me to do what I've what we've enjoyed. And then from there, it's training, equipping, developing your people. A big part of what we did was the associate program that we had. I really fell in love with training and equipping chiropractors through our associate program. We had about 40 associate doctors that came through our practice in about a 17-year period. And I'm not a terrible boss, and they all quit and I had to replace them. We had an apprenticeship, right? So we had very generous mentors that had invested in us. So we wanted to return that and pay it forward. And it was a huge win-win-win opportunity for us. So all of the systems that we teach in the Remarkable Practice was born out of the trial and effort and brain damage associated with raising 40 associate doctors. Like we refined it to a place where chiropractors could reproduce what we had done despite their persona or their personality or their personal power. It was just if they were smart, hungry, and humble, as they say, and they were willing to learn the system, and they had a love for people, and they were hard workers, they were all very, very successful. So that was where the Remarkable Practice coaching business was born. And the rest is history.
I don't know if you're familiar with Naval Ravikant, but he has a great quote that I love. And he says that an expert is just somebody that's made all the mistakes you can make in a very narrow field. And I feel like you speak to that in the sense of building the practice yourself. And so I know it wasn't by accident that you probably went from 0 visit weeks to 1,000 visits per week. But what would be the biggest mental shift that a doctor has to make to go from that person that you probably did as well yourself, making all those mistakes, from a solo, busy, exhausted practitioner to a high volume CEO and owner? Like, what was the mentality shift that you feel like happened over the years that allowed you to do that?
Yes. I'm glad you framed the question that way, because at the end of the day, if you're looking for a mentor, leader, coach, guru, whatever, who just has it all figured out and, never had the challenges and the adversity and didn't make all the mistakes, I'm not your guy. And so I coach, teach, lead from scar tissue. So I have screwed everything up 7 ways to Sunday, and all I'm trying to do is keep people from stepping in it the way I did. So I think a great coach is riddled with scar tissue from experience. And the difference between a tour guide and a travel agent is a travel agent sends you places they've never been before. A tour guide shows you around the village that they know well, right? I am a hardcore tour guide. So I have made all those mistakes. So I think the biggest mental shift that a chiropractor has to make is an identity shift. So we teach the 4 seasons of the chiropractic career: launch, build, scale, exit, right? Those are the 4 seasons available to a chiropractic, let's call it business owner. Launch, build, scale, exit. Launch is your first year in business. Build is when you're an established practitioner, or an established practice, but you are a solo practitioner. So you're the only doctor, right? So you own the practice, but you're the one that's head down, bum up, taking care of all the patients. Scale is when you take that job that you love and turn it into the business you've always wanted by adding other professionals, right? So add a doctor, add an associate, add a partner, have multiple clinics, right? So whatever it is, that's going to scale. And then scale to exit. Exit is when you are looking to make a profitable and graceful exit, right? Which is what everybody wants. Death, taxes, and exiting. Everybody's going to exit, but very few people do it well, right? So we actually teach launch to build to scale, scale to exit, right? We link those seasons together for people and help them just navigate gracefully and successfully through those seasons. So the shift from build to scale, it's an identity shift. In short, you've got to go from being the machine to being the person that builds the machine. Right. That's the long and short of it. You started with an engine metaphor, so I'll stay with that. Right. So when you are the machine, you're the chiropractor that's delivering the care. You're the one that's adjusting, which is a glorious season. There's no dishonoring that incredible season. I never stopped clinical care, and that's a misconception that people have. Is like, as a CEO, even as I scaled and became the CEO, I never stopped clinical care, right? So everybody gets 5 bullets on their scorecard, 5 responsibilities, and one of mine was always clinical care, because it energized me for the other 4 bullets that caused the brain damage, right? So it's like, I love taking care of patients. Today, I'm the CEO of the coaching business of Remarkable Practice. I still coach chiropractors. Like, people are like, you're still coaching? I'm like, yes, I love coaching. Just like I never stopped adjusting, I never stopped coaching. I really like working with chiropractors. I like helping them get breakthroughs. I help them solve problems. I like helping them achieve their goals. And it energizes me for all the other things that cause the brain damage as the CEO. So the identity shift of going from being the machine to building the machine. So when you're an owner operator, you are the machine, right? And when the machine stops working, when you stop adjusting, the business stops, right? So that's not a business, that's a job, right? So making the ascension from building the machine to, from being the machine to building the machine is when you ascend to being the CEO, and your job is to build the team, right? So as the machine, when you're the owner operator, your responsibility, your accountability is in focusing on taking care of the patients. When you make the ascension to CEO, your job, your responsibility, your accountability is to take care of your team, and your team takes care of the patients. So that ascension is the biggest challenge for most chiropractors for a couple of reasons. It's new and scary. It's a new and scary place, right? And most of us are hardcore, brute force, control freak, perfectionist operators, right? So it's like that's a hard thing to unravel, right? To go to the point where you can delegate and trust, right, other people to do a lot of the work. So that's identity shift is very, very hard for most people to make that shift when they have so much experience being successful as the owner operator, to then take this huge step of making the ascension to being CEO and trusting others to do those things. Because to be honest, Corey, when things get hard, there's an irresistible gravitational pull that pulls you back into being that brute force operator who's trying to run and build or the practice on brute force, as opposed to what CEOs do. We build our businesses and run our businesses on leverage, right? So that just that identity and that realization and recognizing you're going to feel like you want to jump back in and just do things when things aren't going well, you're going to completely erode all the trust that you've built, and you're going to disincentivize and demoralize your team, which is really hard to recover from.
I didn't really prep you for this question I'm about to ask, and so take this with a grain of salt or tackle it however you want. But how do you let go of the control issues that come with that, and also to be brutally honest, do you think that everyone is cut out to do that? Because I can definitely see a handful of people that maybe just aren't hardwired to take on to that role, right? Like maybe they just aren't hardwired to be in the position of the CEO and the owner and able to step away from the practice. Maybe they're just not built for that. And I want to say, I want to bring that up because I'm sure there's a handful of people that maybe need some hard truth around that, of like maybe they're just not cut out for it. And then what do they do, right?
So it's a really good question. And, here's my premise on this is that God only makes geniuses. So when you're a business owner, our job description is quite simple. To create environments where people are going to be more successful with us than without us. That's my job description. So I know my businesses. I know the roles in my businesses. So if you're a chiropractor and you own a chiropractic business, the roles or the positions, I'll use our vernacular. You've got a clinic director, you've got an office manager, you might have a business office manager, you have a check-in CA, a check-out CA, that's your front desk team. You might have a tech CA or a clinical CA, and then you have the chiropractors. And in our language, we call them caregivers or business builders, right? So those are the roles. And, if you play basketball, there's roles on a basketball team, right? There's a point guard, there's a shooting guard, there's a shooting forward, there's a power forward, and there's a center. Those are roles, right? So if you're in a band, there's roles, right? You've got somebody in drums, somebody in percussion, rhythm, somebody on the keys, somebody's on horns, somebody's playing lead guitar, somebody plays bass guitar, somebody's on vocals, somebody's on back, right? So the truth is, what you just asked is everybody wants to be the lead singer, but God doesn't make everybody to be a lead singer, right? So, every great band needs a bassist, needs somebody on the drums, somebody on the keys, right? So everybody wants to be quarterback. God makes quarterbacks. So it's like, not everybody's going to be the quarterback. So, and the reality is that we need to have a lot of self-awareness around how has he built me? Like if you're left-handed or right-handed, it's literally, you don't choose to be right-handed or left-handed. That's your hardwiring. Right. So there's a part of the brain called your cognitive profile, and your cognitive profile is the predictor of what role would suit you best. Right. So there's 5 different tests that you could use to map somebody's mind. We use 3 of them when it comes to hiring. Right. So there's cognitive testing, there's affective testing, and there's cognitive testing. Cognitive with a G is what do you know? Affective is what do you love? What type of work energizes you? And cognitive is how do you behave? How do you take action? And that's my favorite one to answer this question, because we hire people for personality, aligned philosophies, technical skills. We fire for behavior, Corey. So I want to know how a person predictably going to behave before I hire them. So I know all the positions on my teams in my businesses. I know what genius each role calls for based on the responsibilities of that role. And I know what their cognitive profile looks like. It's a blood test. So I don't guess, I test. And I know how somebody's hardwired. And you always want to align a person's gifting with their role so they can stay in their zone of genius, so that work is actually energizing to them and it's where they're going to have the best experience and the best outcomes. You put somebody in the wrong role based on their cognitive profile, it's going to suck for them, and so are their outcomes, right? So, and that sucks for the owner. So this is a science, bro. And if you're a serious chiropractor, you're going to be serious about building a team. And even if you own the business, you're like, man, I'm not hardwired to be that entrepreneur. Great, bring one in. I'm not hardwired to be somebody who's high confront and hold people accountable. Great, bring one in, right? So here's the secret, and this takes the pressure off of everybody. You don't have to be awesome at everything. You have to build a team that's awesome at everything.
I'm really glad you said all that because I feel like there's, if I had to guess, there's a correlation between how quickly somebody probably scales their business and their degree of to self-awareness that they have of what they should or should not be doing. If I had to guess, I don't know if there's any hard data around that, but I would assume that there probably is a correlation there. Because I think we're all walking examples and can think back on our life as to things that we tried to do, like me as a practitioner when I used to practice as an OT. I suck at patient care. I'll be honest with you. I
Yeah.
friggin' am terrible. I was not built for that role. And it took me a long time to figure that out. And which is why I'm more on the business side of things now. But
Mhm.
I have to guess there's a big correlation there. I mean, it ties back to, I'm sure you know this research and study as well about how it's pretty conclusive. They've shown that in your like 20s, 30s, even kind of like your 40s are generally speaking your least happy years of life, which kind of shocks a lot of people. And you're actually happiest they have found in your like 50s, 60s and beyond. And you actually only get happier. And I'd be willing to bet a huge part of that is just knowing thyself, like knowing what you like and don't like. And business, I'm sure, directly ties to that.
Yeah, I think you would 100% have to do a cross study on, the correlation between somebody's role. We'll use the term role to say, like, what are your responsibilities? In other words, how do you spend your time? Right. So what do you spend your time doing? Right. Their role and the alignment with their cognitive profile and their happiness. Right. So I love what I do, like to a fault. Right. So I'm the type of person that just, my wife is my guardrails, right? She keeps an eye on me, and the rest of my team is as well. But my default is I actually, work is a happy place for me because I feel like I'm doing exactly what God hardwired me to do. I felt that way taking care of patients, and I feel that way running a coaching business. I'm doing exactly what he built me for. So I have incredible joy in my life, and it's spills my work spills over to my personal life as opposed to my joy in my personal life spilling over and compensating for the lack of joy in my work life. And I just want that for everybody. It's like remarkable doesn't imply perfect, right? So we say the big idea is to create a remarkable practice as part of a remarkable life, not instead of one. And the secret to that is you build the business that supports your remarkable life and not competes with it. And that has so much to do with, alignment.
So I've heard you say that 7 figures is the new 6 figures. So for the doctor who is currently at just trying to break that mark, let's say they're in the 600, 800 revenue range, what is the primary infrastructure or piece, or what's the thing you commonly see that they're missing to be able to break that mark? Because I know you have those 4 different stages. So I'm sure there's something that like they're missing that's not able to get them to that next stage. What do you think it is?
There are lots of capacity issues, right? So, if some doctor is finding themselves, if they're climbing to a 7-figure business and practice, that's great. So there'll be break points that they're experiencing, things that are creating capacity issues. And that's more of like a diagnostic. We call it the crazy 8, the 8 most common capacity blocks. There's not 9, there's not 10, there's 8, right? So I have coached 10,000 chiropractors. There's 8. And it's not a question of, oh, I wonder if that's the one. No, it's the question is to what degree on this continuum of each of these 8 is this playing into my current state of capacity blockage? And so that's a whole other podcast episode, maybe. So what it comes down to be able to break through your next level, right? So we call them break points, right? So the break points and breakthroughs. The breakthroughs always come when you operationalize, professionalize, and optimize, right? So operationalizing is systematizing. Professionalizing is hiring the right people to run the positions. And then optimizing is using your data to drive the effectiveness and the efficiency, right? So effectiveness is the throughput, efficiency is the output. Throughput means capacity to deliver services. Output is the financial, the economic engine. Is it turning out profit, revenues, but profit most importantly, right? So sorry, that was a really complicated answer for what would sound simple. At the end of the day, at every single breakpoint, there's 1 million, 3 million, 8 million, 15 million, 35 million. These are breakpoints. These are business breakpoints, not just chiropractic. But things predictably break, and you have to go, okay, is it my systems? Operationalize, fix my systems. So if you're at 600 and you're trying to go to 1 million, you have to ask yourself, do I have the systems that would pull me past 1 million, right? So if the answer is yes, I've just upgraded all my systems, right? I'm doing TRP and I know that TRP is not going to break, right? So it's like, I have the systems place. It's like, okay, so the second one is professionalize. Do you have the team? And it's not just, oh yeah, no, I hired somebody who was folding t-shirts at the Gap last weekend, and now they're my marketing director, right? So it's like, that's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about, have you hired people that are better at that role than you are, right? So every chiropractor fancies themselves a marketer or a salesperson, or somebody who's an HR expert with the team leading, or I'm a financial, I do my own books, I do my own money. That's amateur hour, right? That's amateur hour. You have to look and say, what investment do I need to make in my team? What's the next team member I need to bring in? Do I need to invest my money to buy their time, energy, focus, and talent to pull my business forward, right? So here's the secret, guys. Like, now I'm putting my coaching hat on, is when you identify the capacity blocks in the business, right? So these are called constraints. When you identify the constraint, you simply say, can I hire a person who has this knowledge base or skill set that can just reconcile this constraint, right? So I just hire it. So if I know that my capacity issue is the fact that I don't have enough qualified leads coming into the business for me to convert and create ideal patients to collect, then I need to address that lead issue. So I need to find a person who is the best qualified person that I can hire, that I can afford to invest, which means I invest ahead of the return. I invest, bring that person in, and I solve my problem. I solve my constraint that's costing me a fortune by not having leads coming into the business. I hire that person, close that constraint, and now I have leads coming into the business. Like, most people don't understand. You have a $250,000 or $500,000 problem you're trying to solve, and you're worried about spending $50,000, $100,000 to solve that problem. Professionals say, what is the constraint I'm trying to overcome? And who is the person that I can hire to bring that knowledge, talent, and experience into my practice so that I can pull my practice forward? It's the difference between owner operator, which is an amateurish view of like, when I can afford to bring somebody in, when we grow, then I'll bring in an office manager. And then when we grow again, then I'll bring in an associate. And then when we grow again, I'll get a marketing manager, right? So guess what happens? They never get to those points, right? A professional, a business-minded person says, this is my goal. I am going to invest in the right time, somebody's time, energy, focus, and talent, bring them in, and they're going to pull the business forward. And then I know my next hire is this person, then I'm going to pull the business forward. And we do all this with confidence, Corey, because we use our data, we use our metrics. So it's not being reckless and throwing money and people at problems. We are very clear using data exactly who our next hire is and whether they are performing.
As somebody who does marketing for a lot of chiropractors, I can safely say the conversation I most regularly have to have with people is understanding their ROI, which is, I feel like, exactly what you're talking about, is investing into the growth of the business as opposed to hoping the business grows and then somehow having some extra money floating around to be able to do it. You gave me a perfect segue into understanding the metrics of a business and how important that is for clarity. Walk us through that. Like, well, two things, two parts of this question. So you can take either one of these. Is one part of the question is okay, let's say that a practice understands that they have constraints and bottlenecks. One, how do they identify that? You're probably going to hate that question, but I think that's an important one to ask. And then the other side of that is, how closely does that tie to understanding your metrics or knowing your data? And or do they not tie together at all?
They're literally woven together. They're inseparable, right? So it's a great question. So identifying where your constraints are in your business is a constant and never ending process. You don't arrive, right? So think about business like fitness, right? So you don't arrive at fitness and be like, oh, good, now I'm fit. I don't have to worry about that anymore. What am I going to do with all the time I've spent getting fit, right? So it's like, it is a constant and never-ending process, right? So the business fitness tool that we use is the accountability grid. So we have a tool, it's a lens you lay over the practice and lay over the business, and it helps you identify exactly where the constraints are today, right? And it's the most powerful tool that we use. And we have a lot of tools in the remarkable practice. So the accountability grid is my favorite. It's probably complete explanation of this is outside the scope of today's conversation, but the accountability grid is the tool where you have all of the 5 domains of the business and 5 domains of the practice, right? So maybe take a step back, and you hear me using the terms business and practice. And as you know, I'm very intentional when I do that. So here's my spiel. There's 2 sides to the chiropractic coin. There's the practice, and then there's the business. Okay. So the practice is the clinical entity that exists to deliver healthcare and drive better health experiences and better health outcomes for the patients. On the other side of the coin is the business. And the business, the remarkable business, is the economic engine that exists to drive productivity in the form of revenue and profit for the owners, for the investors, and for the team. Okay, so it's really important we understand that there's 2 sides to the coin. Just like somebody went to school, they became a chiropractor, they learned how to be a doctor, and then they got in practice and they're like, oh shit, I need to now learn how to run a practice. That's a different set of skills and a different knowledge base. So that's where you have to learn how to be an operator. That's the operations. So you have to go from being a doctor, and now you have to gain the skill sets of being an operator, right? So you learn attraction, conversion, retention, team building, collections. Those are the operations of a practice. And then if you own a practice and you own a business, you recognize, oh shit, I need to actually learn how to be a business builder, right? So when you look at business, that's the economic engine. Now you have the domains. It's a different skill set of it's a different identity, being a business owner, right? So to grow a business, now we're talking about marketing, sales, delivery, people, and money, right? Those are the domains of the business. And you can see that there are 2 sides of the same coin, but they are totally different, identities, skill sets, and knowledge bases. And it's been my experience, Corey, that most chiropractors do not lay awake at night worrying about their practice. They lay awake at night worrying about their business, right? So there's such a knowledge gap there. So we have an accountability grid for both the practice and the business. We ask 2 questions. Is it optimized 0 to 10 and who owns it? We take them through this whole exercise, and it reveals anything that's a 7 or below is a constraint of the business. And then we address the constraints of the business, right? So once you've unearthed that, now you know exactly, what to assign, like who's going to do what by when. And now you have an accountability opportunity to hold people accountable. So you asked a question about data. You cannot score 0 to 10 on how you feel. Well, I feel like we're an 8. You know what? I don't know. I think that's kind of a 4, right? So that's not what we're asking. We're asking you according to your data. According to your data, 0 to 10, is it optimized? 10 means we are actually crushing goal. 9 means we're hitting goal. 8 means we will hit goal if we have a strong finish this week, this month, this quarter. A 7 is close to goal, but no cigar. 5s are worse than 7s, 3s are worse than 5s, 1s are worse than 3s. So this is objective, it's quantified, because the best CEOs are data-driven, right? So the best businesses are data-driven. Best leaders and managers are data-driven, right? So at the end of the day, for me personally, I'm allergic to drama. Like I hate drama, right? So, and there's no room for drama and emotion in business. It just isn't. It's going to make you a worse business person. So what I know to be true, in a high data environment, you have low drama. And in a low data environment, you have high drama, right? So now you're running your business on emotion. And that's a terrible way to run and lead a business. And to be truthful, nobody wants to work for a crazy person. And if you're not using data, you're a crazy person. And everybody in your team knows it, So the way to squelch that, right, is to increase your data and visibility into your data, become more objective, and peace on earth, bro.
Nobody wants to date a crazy person either, and I'm going to tell you where I'm going to tell you where I'm going with this. So, as of recently, my fiance, our lease is ending on our place, and so we're looking potentially to move somewhere else. And she was giving me some options of other places that we could potentially go get a lease or buy or whatever. And I kind of I pulled back on it, to be honest with you, Steven. I was like, well, are you just like choosing these because like this feels like the right decision, or like do we even have a budget? Like what of our number, like what's our data, like what's our numbers, like do we, like what can we or can we not afford? Are we making like a rash decision about this, or are we just like picking what like looks nice and convenient? And so I say this to ask you, we don't have to go too far down this rabbit hole, but it got me thinking
Better to
about
pull back then pull back on the engagement because that might have
Yeah.
not
Yeah.
done.
But like, so I'm curious, do you, I don't know, again, this is kind of a personal question, take it or leave it, but do you
Bro,
also,
ask me whatever you want.
okay, so do you have like a scorecard for like your relationship as well? Or like do you track some of the stuff? Do you do like check-ins or metric tracking or anything of that
Yeah, my
relation?
wife has a scorecard, but I certainly do. She has one for me.
Okay.
Um, you know what? I Dr. John DeMartini was a big influence on me, one of my earliest mentors, and I love Dr. John and everything he's done for us. So, one of the things he used to talk about was take your public's private and your private's public, and I thought that was really genius because, what we found in our marriage was because we Camille and I met in school, so we've been together since the first quarter party, which was the second week of school at Life University, right? So we've been together 33 years, and we've been together since that party, since that night. Like, so we've done everything together, like all through school, like internship in Arkansas, associateship in Virginia, starting our own practice, the original rock and roll practice in Boston. She's from Sweden. We started the coaching business together, and all of our other businesses, we've done everything together, right? So, what we found was through the seasons, as it went from she and I being in practice together, no children. We were together 12 years before we had kids. Now we have beautiful families, beautiful children. And that period of time when we were blessed and we were successful. We had set up the systems. I had set up the associates, and she was really called to be a full-time mom. And I'm like, honey, go home, follow your heart. Like, that's your purpose. That's your calling right now. And she's a hardcore clinician too. She loves taking care of patients, but it was like, for this season, we have the opportunity, right? You have the optionality. You can actually go home. I got this, right? So, and that was wonderful, except for, the fact that we went from being side by side together all the time to she was home with the kids and I was at work. I'm building 1,000-a-week practice with a whole, all the craziness, and she's running a house full of kids and babies. And so, by the time at the end of the day, the last thing I wanted to do after adjusting 350 patients and driving an hour back from the office was have a real conversation. Right. So, we were frustrated with the communication breakdown, just like every other couple, right? So, long answer to your question is, one of the things that we found we did really well at our practice was we have meeting rhythms, and that's where we go over our reporting system. So, although she doesn't necessarily have to have a scorecard for me, we don't have one for each other. We do have our meeting rhythm. We call it a coffee break. And the coffee break is our weekly meetup where 90 minutes, 2 hours, we come together and we have our meeting, and we run our personal life like a company. And we've run a really successful life. And I attribute a lot of that to our coffee break, because coffee break is not a date night. In fact, it protects date night, right? So, I don't know about you, but I want to get lucky on date night, right? So, and I don't want to have a meeting, but that is just not going to get me where I'm trying to go here, right? So, I'm good at meetings, but that's not the pillow talk and the foreplay that's going to get us there, right? So, that moment, that has to be protected, right? So, and you have to create the space and time for the very real exchanges that have to happen in a family and in a couple. So that coffee break protected all of the other minutes of the week, because you could always just know in your head, I'll bring it up at coffee break. Or if one of us would say something, we'd be like, hey, can we talk about that at coffee break this week? So it was just a place for us to go respectfully to be able to say, hey, that's a real thing. We need to talk about it. Let's bring it to coffee break. Right. So I hope that blesses people. It's a very simple and easy thing to do. We actually created a PDF because so many couples do this now. They do coffee breaks. It's in several books, and we made a PDF to guide a coffee break and everything. So if you want, I can send that to you, and you guys can share it with your audience. But that's my scorecard response. We don't necessarily have a scorecard in our personal life, but we definitely have a meeting rhythm. But otherwise, my rule is, if I give you a paycheck, you get a scorecard. So if I give you a paycheck, you get a scorecard. It's very simple. My landscaper gets a scorecard, right? So it's like, if I'm paying you to do a job, you get a scorecard. 5 bulleted, outlined responsibilities, 5 measurables. Those are 5 KPIs, key performance indicators, metrics that you own, right? So these are your 5. This is your role, organized under your role of these 5 responsibilities. Each one of these responsibilities is measurable. That creates a KPI. We assign a goal to that KPI. You're accountable to that outcome. And that's what we talk about when we get into these meeting rhythms. So we're focused on the right things, and focus is what makes the difference between busyness and productivity.
Well, I mean, we do a monthly meeting. We don't do a weekly, so I would actually be curious as to like what the weekly one looks like. But yeah, we have a list of questions. We don't do a scorecard either, but there is a cadence to the questions that we ask
Mhm.
every month. And one of my favorite questions, if anyone wants to steal this, actually on this monthly thing, is what's something new you want to try this coming month? And it always
Mhm.
like forces us to kind of get creative about maybe a new coffee spot or restaurant or whatever. It doesn't have to be anything elaborate, or maybe a cooking class. I don't know, whatever you're
I
into.
love
But
that.
that is definitely one of the favorite questions on there.
Keep that
But so
busy you get, that's going to get challenged, and that's something you want to protect, fight to
yeah,
protect that.
yeah, 100%. I mean, the fact that you can do it weekly is phenomenal. But goes to say a lot about how you've built the systems.
I have a leadership. I have what, 6 meetings every single week that happen every single week, unless I'm on vacation, So, but 48 out of 52 weeks a year, I have certain meetings. If I can protect those meetings and the sanctity of those meetings, none of those relationships are more important than my relationship with my wife. So, it's like it's very easy for me to say, if you know me, I'm a calendar guy. Like if you're on my calendar, if I don't show up, call 911. Right. Honestly, like ask anybody who knows me. It's like there's a problem, right? So, but if it's not on my calendar, forget it. There's no chance. There's no chance I'm gonna be there. Literally, I just do what my calendar tells me to do. And for some people, like, oh man, that just sounds just too restrictive and rigid. I'm like, I'm the happiest guy you know. I know when I'm working out today. I know that I had a brunch this morning in the sunshine with my wife. I know we're going out for a nice dinner tonight. I know exactly where my time with my children is and where I'm on vacation and where, I mean, the all the boulders are in there. So I'm not stressed about like, oh, when am I going to get that done? I schedule my work time block for everything. And this helps me protect my focus right now. Like I'm not into time management. I'm into focus mastery. And the only person in the world right now is Corey Hyman.
Likewise, man. I feel the same way about you. We're definitely hired the same way. I don't want to tell anybody how to live their life because I know some people are wired differently, but I'm the exact same way. I've completely outsourced my brain to my Google
Yes.
Calendar to the point to exactly what you said, where if it's actually not on the calendar, this just happened recently with my fiance and I. There was
Not a
something that,
chance.
yeah, she mentioned something, and I was like, "Is it on the calendar?" She's like, "No." I was like, there's no way. I'm not holding that data in my
There's
head.
not a chance.
Yeah, there's no way
Not a
I'm holding
chance.
that data in my head. But
Yeah.
you mentioned the five metrics or scorecard items. I'm curious as to for the business owner, we can transition back here to more of the listener and the owners out there. Is what are the top metrics that you think the business owners should be keeping an eye on that would help them to ensure growth in their business? And you don't even necessarily do all five. I mean, maybe if you just gave like the top three that you think like all owners should be tracking these numbers, what do you think it is?
Okay, so there's practice metrics and there's business metrics, right? So practice metrics are operational metrics, and business metrics are economic metrics, finances. Okay, so just want to draw that distinction because that's my appointment. I think in chiropractic, it's like I'm going to help people understand that there's operations and then there's economics, right? So operations is people have probably more of a fluency in. So I'll say in chronological order when we talk about attraction, conversion, retention, team building, collections, right? Those are your operations. So I'd say for attraction, I probably, if we're going to do like a super high level for attraction, new patient show rate, day one show rate, right? So you appreciate that as a marketer, right? So the economics, you're looking at CPL, cost per lead, CAC, cost to acquire a customer. You're looking at LTV, so your lifetime value. You're looking at your LTV CAC ratio, which is incredibly important. And you're looking at your ROAS, right? Return on ad spend. Those are your five economic, right? So those are the business metrics. As far as an operational metric, I'll give you one of them on marketing. It's day one show rate, right? So that's one to measure, right? Because it's one you can have a lot of influence over. For conversion process, I would look at day one to day two stick rate. So if you're doing recommendations for care and closing on day two, the day one to day two stick rate is going to speak a lot about your conversion process. Number three, I would say conversion rate, what rate at which people are converting to care. Number four, I would say probably the most important metric in delivery and retention is compliance percentage. So kept visit average, if you had 100 people scheduled to come in today, out of that 100 people, what percentage of them actually came in? Not including call-ins and walk-ins, it's compliance percentage. Compliance is critical and nobody talks about it. It's unsexy, but it's the most important thing for an on-purpose business owner and practice owner is compliance percentage. Compliance drives clinical outcomes, referrals, retention, and revenue, period. So you're in the compliance business. So you want to be tracking compliance, kept visit average. And then finally, I'd say a stick rate for either a time frame or a milestone. So you might say, what's my 12 visit stick rate, or what's my 30-day stick rate, what's my 90-day stick rate, or what's my R4 stick rate if you're doing re-exams, re-reports. The end of my first care plan, that's a stick rate, which is if somebody says, I'm going to come in for 12 visits or 24 visits or 36 visits, whatever your care plan is, what percentage of those people that say I'm going to complete that care plan, what percentage actually complete that care plan? That's called your stick rate. So there's a quick 5 for you for operations.
How do you get people to actually own that though, right? Like you gave the example of you even have a scorecard for your landscaper. So like, I mean, we could talk about the landscaper, we could talk about front desk, we could talk about associate, but if they all have a scorecard, how do you get them to actually like own it and strive for those numbers versus just like hitting a checklist and just like doing what needs to be done?
Well, there's two ways to do things. You can either do management by expectations and agreements or management by objectives, right? So those are two different leadership styles. If it's management by expectations and agreements, it's like these are my expectations, and if you want to work here, and we all run small businesses, so you only have so many seats in the boat, right? So everybody got an oar, and you're going to be rowing. So you don't get what you want, you get what you tolerate, Corey. So it's like at the end of the day, it's like I only hire A players who share my core values and are buying into the vision story. These are people that you don't have to motivate. I hire motivated people, and I work hard not to demotivate them, right? So, and then I get us incentivized and make sure everybody's aligned. When we get aligned, we get along, right? So everybody has to see that there's an economic gain for them. If the better the business does, the better they do. So when you can tie into what's called PPFG, personal, professional, financial goals, you'll get aligned with your team, and they recognize that, hey, when the tide comes in, all boats rise. So that's where you tap into that discretionary energy that's tied to the economics of the business, so that they're not just driving the capacity of the business to serve more people, throughput, but they're actually driving the revenue and profitability of the business, the output, because that they know the better we do, the better we do.
Hmm. So I know you have obviously mastered, based on everything we've talked about, the internal systems, the team building. But I'm curious as to like what your thoughts are on the digital side of things. I actually remember what a conversation we had when we were in Colorado is like how much you've even talked about an ROI actually into social ads versus the other types of digital ads, Google ads, or whatever your thing is. I'm curious as to like what you are seeing works for most high level clinic owners. Like, how do you look at the digital side of things, and how do you match that like 5-star quality with the digital side as in the same way that you do in the internal systems?
Uh, I mean, that's a complex question. So I'll answer it in two ways. So, from a market facing perspective, when you talk about a 5-star experience, like I'm assuming you're meaning like the continuity in your digital footprint, right? Like, so you should have a website that represents you, represents your brand. And your brand is what are you affiliated with, associated with, right? So represents and attracts your ideal client profile, your ICP, right? So do you have a website for starters that would attract your ideal client? So when they do land on your site, they're like, oh, I'm in the right place. This person is going to help me get what I want. And, we could speak for 20 minutes on what does that look and feel like, but that's what you want to be thinking. It's like when my ideal client lands on this page, are they going to say, oh, I'm in the right place, and this is the person that I need to go and see, right? That's what you want to be thinking when you look at your website, right? So how they got to your site is probably through some type of ad or social media, whether it's you're doing some kind of content marketing strategy, or there's some kind of paid traffic, some kind of ad that they've been seeing, or a combination of all of those things. And I think continuity is really important there, so that it's like, I know my ideal client profiles, I know my 5 ICPs, and I know that all of my all of my content is talking to one of those 5 ideal client profiles, because I know what problems we solve. I know what goals they have. We help them reach those goals. So I'm only going to speak to those people to compel those people to contact the Remarkable Practice. And hey, you know what? You were talking to me. That's exactly me. That's exactly the problem I'm trying to solve. And that's exactly the goals I'm trying to reach. So I want to compel those people to reach out to us and repel everybody else, right? So I want to make sure that there's continuity from what they heard me say on Instagram and a reel to, oh, wow, this guy, that reel is an edit from a podcast. I'm going to go follow the Remarkable CEO podcast. It's like, oh man, I've been binge, consuming this guy's podcast. I just listened to 3 podcasts in a row. It's like, this is unbelievable, right? So now I'm going to go, back to the website, and I'm going to book a call because I want to get on to a strategy session with this guy, right? So it's like that kind of continuity is really important. And then having the social proof to top off all of that continuity so that people look and they'd be like, wow, people just like me are able to be helped by this group, by these coaches, achieve their goals. And of course, you're talking about, again, the pain points, the problems that you're solving, and the goals you're helping people reach, right? So whether you're running a coaching business or a chiropractic office or you're selling snow tires, it's the same thing. You just have to figure out, like, what is my ideal client profile? What problems are they trying to solve? What goals are they trying to reach? And when you just look at all my stuff, is it clear that I am the expert, or my group is the expert, or my company is the expert, right? So I think that that's an important part of it. As far as outcomes go, I think that it's a moving target. I do not envy you as a digital marketer, honestly. You're at effect, bro. It's like, I'm a surfer, man, and when you're in the ocean, you're not in charge, right? So it's like, yeah, you guys have your work cut out for you, because it is a moving target, right? So, and at the end of the day, it's seasonal, it's always changing, it's regional, it's all of those nightmares to overcome. But at the end of the day, if you are data driven and you're really proactive and measuring and testing and A/B testing, and you understand analytics, the right person who knows those 5 metrics that we just talked about, we're having CAC, LTV, and LTV CAC ratio conversations. We're always talking about ROAS. We're always talking about return on investment. And as long as you are consistent, progressively trying to beat your controls, and you're having a data-driven conversation, you have to be investing in digital marketing. You have to be, right? So if you're going to be carefree about it, or callous about it, or undisciplined about it, or you're going to be, most people dramatically underspend, right? So they're not even in the game, right? So it's like, you've got to get educated. You've got to close your knowledge gap. You have to know what 4 or 5 numbers that you need to be able to understand to talk to your fractional digital marketing experts, so you can have real data-driven conversations, and you can boldly and confidently invest more in your marketing, because new patient flow is the oxygen into this combustion engine called your practice. And you're going to get the highest return on your invested capital. Your return on invested capital, ROIC, for your business is going to be better than stock market, buying investment properties, real estate, buying a laundromat, buying vending machines, or like all this craziness you hear out there. Is like, oh, start your own Airbnb business. No, invest in your business, serve humanity, create an appreciating asset that cash flows. And once you can no longer intelligently invest in your business, meaning in your marketing and your team, then you can put money in the stock market, put it in real estate, and have other, APAP businesses as passive as possible. But keep your focus on your business, invest in attracting more new patients. And the return on invested capital is so far ahead of any other investment you're going to find out there.
Focus, follow one course until success, as they say, right? I always
right.
fall back on Warren Buffett, who's, one of the richest men on the planet. And I think they said that he invested in all of 10 companies over the course of his entire career, aka he focused on a very small number of businesses, and he's the richest man on the planet. So
that's right.
Enough said.
Well, he was also the one that said that diversification is a hedge against ignorance, right? So when people are like, well, don't you want to be diversified? I'm like, yes, I diversify across all of my businesses.
Bingo.
Now, and once I've exhausted, like I'm heavily invested in real estate, heavily invested in the stock market, heavily invested in insurance, et cetera. But all of those were way downstream from me investing in my business, where I have the greatest influence, experience, and expertise in creating returns.
Yeah. I mean, assuming you're not, doing anything insane, I think that investing in your business is by far the best investment you can make, hands down. No question.
Yeah, it's not even an argument, to be honest with you. It's like, that's why, I mean, the following a proven system, like, a soft commercial for the macro practice, this is a proven system. It's like, how do you invest in your business? Well, what I do is I find a proven system and I hire somebody to hold me accountable to executing it. That's how I invest. It's and the returns are unbelievable. Right? I don't want to spend any time trying to figure this out on my own.
Yeah. Well, speaking of the remarkable practice, let's land this plane. I want to respect your time, and I know you probably have a 100 different talks you're doing this year,
Mhm,
but
mhm, yeah.
tell the audience a little bit about the remarkable practice, maybe where they can find it, and it sounds like we got an offer as well that we can offer people.
Yeah, so we have the Remarkable Practice Coaching business, as I said, has the Four Seasons, which the Four Seasons organizes conversations like this, but it's also how we organize all of our content. It's how we organize all of our programs, our coaches, our experts, and all of our clients, right? The four seasons to your career. So whether you're in launch, build, scale, or exit, launch is that first year in business. Build is that established practitioner who's an owner operator, the person that's head down, bum up, taking care of all the patients. The scaling doctor who's finally now adding associate doctors or has multiple associate doctors or is trying to figure out how to optimize their associate doctors. And then exit, somebody who's looking for their successor or looking for, what is my exit strategy? We have programs for all doctors. So regardless of where you are in the arc of your career, we'll help you navigate whatever career, whatever season you're in right now, successfully and profitably, and help you get into that next season. The coaching program itself, the best way to get a taste of what we do is to come to our immersions. So we have two live events, two immersions. One is the Remarkable Practice immersion, and one is the Remarkable Business immersion. So remember, the practice is all about operations. It's all of your attraction, conversion, retention, team building, and collections. And the business is the economic engine, right? So that's your marketing, your sales, your delivery, your people, and the money. So I like to say, if you want to see more people, if you want to help more people, bring your team to the Remarkable Practice immersion. If you want to make more money, bring your team to the Remarkable Business immersion, right? So, and most people are like, well, I want to do both. Well, you know my answer. Bring your team to both of the immersions, right? So that's why we separate them, because there are two different conversations. So the business immersion is coming up in March. It's like 5 weeks out or something like that. So March 5th, 6th, and 7th. So it's Thursday night, all day Friday, all day Saturday. Again, bring your entire team. That's going to be in Phoenix, which is where I am right now. I'm coming to you from Phoenix. And then 2 weeks later, I'll be in Brisbane, Australia. We have a whole team in Brisbane, Australia. About 25% of our clients are in Australasia. So we teach our immersions over in Australia as well. So the 19th, 20th, and 21st, I'll be in Brisbane, Australia as well, teaching the business immersion. So Remarkable Business Immersion. Come and check out our awesome team. We have such an impressive group of experts. Corey, you can speak into our events a little bit here, but our tribe, there'll be 600-700 people strong at these events, and it's all our clients, right? So it's just like, these are people that are just in our tribe, connected with each other, like-minded people, really smart, loving, generous, on-purpose people. And man, what a great way to get your team not only equipped but energized, so they go back and understand how to drive greater profit in the business, because when the tides come in, all boats rise.
Yeah, I can definitely speak to. I went to the one in Orlando, and I'm still to this day doing weekly calls with two guys, or one guy that I met there, and then he introduced me to someone else, and we've been doing monthly calls with them ever since then, and it's been so valuable. So that alone made the trip worth it. So,
Just awesome,
um,
man. So
yeah,
we've got tickets are $1,500. We're going to put a link to the landing page. You can learn more about the event and register your team. And we're also going to do a giveaway, right? So you generously want to give away one ticket. We call it a golden ticket. So it's a free ticket. So it's 3 seats. So you've got typically the owner plus two, so 2 team members. So that's a $1,500 ticket. You get a golden ticket. So you get to come at no charge. You will be our guest. And I'm going to match that. So TRP is going to give a golden ticket also. So we get 2 free tickets. Now, here's how you win the free tickets. You got to go to Instagram, follow me on Instagram, right? So my handle is at Dr. Stephen Franson. So you can see my name down below here. So Dr. Stephen with a Phen, Franson, Franson, Dr. Stephen Franson. Find me on Instagram. And then just DM me remarkable_ChiroX or something that looks something like that. So we'll know what you have ChiroX in there. Remarkable_ChiroX. Just DM me. The first 2 people to do it win the $1,500 tickets. Everybody else, get out your checkbook, get out your credit card, get onto that website. The link's down below. Let's see you in Phoenix.
Steven, this has been phenomenal. Your time is always so valuable, so I appreciate it. So thanks again for doing this, man.
Always a pleasure and a privilege to speak to chiropractors, man. Thank you, Corey. Thanks for helping me serve my purpose, man.